Eliani killbots slashed through helpless crowds as their plasma cannons melted skyscrapers into infernos of molten glass. The alien death machines marched relentlessly, scything through defense lines as their self-repair systems negated the humans' desperate attacks. The Eliani invasion had begun. Captain Johnny Lewis ducked behind rubble, gripping his rifle as the swarm of killer robots swept through New York City. Just hours ago, the Eliani battle fleet had materialized in Earth orbit without warning, disgorging waves of gleaming chrome death. Conventional weapons barely slowed the alien monstrosities as they overran the ill-prepared human defenses. These were the shock troops of a hostile civilization far beyond anything Earth had encountered since spreading to the stars. But no one expected first contact would come as a war of extermination. Sergeant Max sprayed the bots with his railgun as tracers slashed back and forth. "Cap, this is FUBAR! Nothing's stopping these tin cans!" Lewis slammed a fresh power cell into his rifle. "We'll make our stand here. Buy time for the civilians to flee the kill zone." Vortis watched the carnage from the Eliani flagship, all four eyes narrowing with satisfaction. These pathetic primates were defenseless against his perfected robotic warriors. Earth would fall within a cycle, its people erased like vermin. Humanity's colonies would swiftly follow. Soon this galaxy would belong to the Eliani Empire alone. On the shattered streets, Lewis rolled away just as a plasma blast vaporized the concrete where he'd crouched a microsecond before. His team fought with skill and courage, but it was like ants against a tsunami. Man's weapons were useless. The bots adapted, reconfigured, reknit their torn alloy shells, and kept coming, kept killing. Civilization itself was unraveling, governments collapsing, cities dying as the robot scourge spread unchecked. The last free human survivors gathered in the ruins, numb with despair, waiting for the inevitable end. It couldn't be stopped. The human race was doomed. But then a discovery changed everything. A slim, desperate chance, but a chance all the same. Lewis steeled himself, checking his ammo. If he could fight through to that DARPA lab, seize the secret weapon, humanity might still have a shot. A final defiant middle finger to the monsters who sought to wipe them out. The other Terran forces would launch a diversion, sacrificing themselves to open the way. This was it. All or nothing. The killer robots had no idea what the humans were about to unleash on their shiny metal asses. Lewis gritted his teeth, blasting a path through the metallic hordes with his rifle as his squad advanced block by hard-fought block. Spent shell casings pinged off the cracked pavement. Nguyen clutched a battered laptop to his chest, their last best hope. The towering DARPA complex loomed ahead, its reinforced walls still standing amidst the rubble. Lewis shouldered through the titanium doors, gun at the ready. "Doc, tell me you got something that can stop these things." Nguyen set his laptop on a workbench, fingers flying over the keys. "I've developed a localized EMP device. It'll fry the robot's circuits, but..." "But what?" Lewis scanned the room, alert for any metal bastards that slipped past their defenses. "Extremely limited range. You'd have to detonate it dead center in the densest concentration of hostiles. Even then, it would only zap the ones in the immediate blast radius." Mac reloaded his weapon. "Better than nothing. Where is it?" Nguyen input a code and a vault hissed open, revealing a small spherical device, blinking diodes covering its gunmetal surface. "If we could airlift this into the heart of Manhattan and set it off, it should disable a substantial chunk of their forces in one go." Lewis grabbed the EMP. "Then that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's move." The soldiers sprinted to the roof where a Chinook transport chopper waited, rotors already spinning. They clambered aboard, strapping in as it lifted off. "Man, the minigun!" Lewis shouted over the roar of the engines. Max swiveled the massive weapon around, drawing a bead on the incoming Eliani drones. Tracer rounds stitched the sky, ripping into the alien machines. Flaming scrap metal pinwheeled earthward. In the hold, Nguyen hunched over the EMP, making final preparations. Manhattan rose on the horizon, a hellscape of fire and ruin. Robots swarmed like ants over toppled skyscrapers. Mac hosed streams of lead into the drone vanguard. "They just keep coming," The chopper banked hard, flares spiraling away. A drone exploded meters from the windshield. 30 seconds! The pilot yelled. That was when Lewis saw it. A drone, trailing smoke but still alive, careening straight for them on a kamikaze run. He opened his mouth to yell a warning. The world flipped end over end, alarms shrieking. Nguyen clung white-knuckled to a handhold. EMP armed! It's going to blow any second! Lewis had a split second to act. He lunged across the hold, grabbed Nguyen, and hurled him out the side door, EMP clutched tight. Then he was in the cockpit, wrestling with the stick, trying to pull the bird out of its death spiral. Nguyen plummeted, the wind roaring in his ears. He hit the sea of robots like a cannonball, and then the world went white. The EMP erupted in a blinding, crackling sphere of electricity. For a frozen moment, the army of steel stood motionless. Then they fell. Tens of thousands of gleaming bodies crashed to earth, circuit boards slagged, red eyes going dark. Smoke curled from their lifeless forms. 2 blocks over, Lewis dragged himself out of the twisted remains of the Chinook, uniform torn and blood-stained. He surveyed the carnage, the whole of Manhattan carpeted with sparking robotic corpses. Halfway across the world, Vortis slammed a fist into his command console. Damage reports flooded in, entire attack waves crippled in an instant. The human insects had pulled off the impossible. In the following days, the tide began to turn. EMPs rolled off Earth assembly lines and were rushed to the front. Her armies rallied, the specter of defeat imbued with the light of hope. High above, invisible to the naked eye, a desperate battle raged. Earth's battered space fleet hurled themselves against the Eliani ships. Nuclear missiles and energy beams crisscrossed the void. Kamikaze frigates rammed the behemoths, EMPs pulsing like a dying star. In the chaos, a single drop shuttle separated from the mayhem. Lewis, one arm in a blood-soaked sling, joined the hand-picked men and women of his strike team. This fight would be settled face to face. The shuttle punctured the Eliani flagship's hull like a hypodermic needle. Lewis was first out, rifle spitting death. Vortis's honor guard rushed to meet them, blades crackling with power. The humans fell upon them, all the fury of a species pushed to the brink made manifest in their roaring charge. Lewis charged forward, his team a whirlwind of destruction behind him. Honor guard droids swarmed from every direction, their metal bodies clanking as they advanced. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching holes in bulkheads. "Push through!" Lewis shouted, firing his rifle in controlled bursts. The corridors echoed with the staccato of gunfire and the screech of tearing metal. Sergeant Ramirez moved up beside him, his face grim. "We're running low on ammo, Cap." A droid lunged at them. Lewis ducked, Ramirez fired, and the machine collapsed in a shower of sparks, but more kept coming. Suddenly, a barrage of plasma fire erupted from a side passage. Ramirez stumbled, his chest smoking. "No!" Lewis cried as his friend fell. Rage consumed him. Lewis pulled the pins on his remaining grenades and hurled them down the corridor. The explosions rocked the ship, scattering droid parts in all directions. "Move!" Lewis ordered, and his team surged forward through the gap. They fought their way to the command bridge where they found Vortis. The alien overlord's tentacles were plugged into consoles, his eyes darting across screens filled with data. Lewis sprinted toward him, dodging plasma bolts. Just as he closed in, Vortis yanked free of the interface. A shimmering force field sprang to life around him. "Foolish human," Vortis sneered. "This is but one ship. My fleets have already reduced your cities to ash. Soon my robots will exterminate every last one of you insects." Lewis faltered, overwhelmed by the alien's confidence. Then he heard a weak voice behind him. Cap." It was Ramirez, barely alive. With trembling hands, the sergeant pulled the pin on his last grenade and lobbed it at Vortis. "Finish it." The explosion disrupted the force field. Vortis stumbled back, exposed. Lewis drew his combat knife and lunged. Vortis met him with razor-sharp claws. They clashed in a furious melee, blade against alien flesh. Vortis was stronger, but Lewis fought with the fury of Earth's last hope. He ducked under a swipe, rolled, and slashed upward. His knife bit deep into Vortis's torso. The alien commander collapsed, ichor oozing from the wound. Lewis retrieved his sidearm and pressed it to Vortis's head. "This changes nothing," Vortis hissed. "You've only delayed the inevitable." Lewis's finger tightened on the trigger. "Not on my watch." The gunshot rang out and Vortis went still. Lewis stared at Vortis's lifeless body, his ears still ringing from the gunshot. He shook off the momentary shock and turned to his team. "Secure the bridge. We're not done yet." As his soldiers fanned out, Lewis rushed to the main control console. His fingers flew over the alien interface, decoding the strange symbols. A hollow screen flickered to life, showing Earth under relentless bombardment. "Damn it," Lewis muttered. He keyed in a comm frequency. "Admiral Caldwell, this is Captain Lewis. Vortis is down, but his fleets are still active. We need options. Fast." Caldwell's voice crackled through, strained and exhausted. "Lewis, thank God, but I've got bad news. We've got Aliani reinforcements incoming. Our orbital defenses are shot to hell. We're outgunned and outnumbered." Lewis's stomach dropped. There's got to be something we can do. Unless we can stop their robot production, we're looking at a war of attrition. One we can't win. Lewis's eyes darted across the alien displays. Something caught his attention. Coordinates, repeated patterns. He zoomed in on a sector of lunar terrain. "Hold on, Admiral. I think I found something." He enhanced the image, revealing a massive structure on the far side of the moon. "It's some kind of automated factory. This must be where they're cranking out those killbots." "Can we hit it?" Caldwell asked. Lewis studied the factory's defenses. Negative. A direct assault would be suicide. Silence hung over the comm. Then Lewis spoke up. "I've got an idea. It's crazy, but it might be our only shot." He outlined his plan. A small team to infiltrate the factory and upload a virus, while Earth's remaining nukes took out the Eliani ships bombarding the surface. "It's a long shot," Caldwell said, "but it's the best we've got. I'll prep the warheads. You get your team ready." Lewis nodded grimly. "Understood. We'll need our best. Get me Staff Sergeant Mack and Corporal Kozlov." Within hours, Lewis stood before his hand-picked squad of 8. Their faces were hard, determined. They knew the stakes. "This is it, people," Lewis said. "Our last chance to save Earth. Let's make it count." They boarded a lunar rover, retrofitted for stealth. As they sped across the moon's desolate surface, Lewis gripped the controls tightly. Craters and jagged rocks loomed in the darkness. Suddenly, Kozlov's voice cut through the silence. "Contact! Eliani drones! 3 o'clock!" Lewis swerved hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy bolts. The rover bounced violently over the terrain as more drones closed in. "Hold on!" Lewis shouted, gunning the engine. They plunged into a deep crater, using the shadows for cover. For agonizing minutes, they sat in tense silence as drone patrols buzzed overhead. Finally, Lewis eased the rover forward. The factory loomed ahead, a behemoth of metal and pulsing energy fields. Lewis's team deployed, weapons ready. "Breach charges set," Mack reported. Lewis nodded. "Do it." The explosion rocked the lunar surface. Alarms blared as the team stormed inside. They were immediately met with a hail of plasma fire. "Push through!" Lewis shouted, returning fire. His rifle spat death, downing robot after robot. They fought their way deeper, but at a cost. 2 of his men went down in the initial assault. Finally, they reached a junction. Lewis made a snap decision. "Mack, Kozlov, take your squad and find the control nexus. We'll draw their fire." As Mack's team peeled off, Lewis led the rest in a frontal assault on the factory's main production line. Sparks flew as bullets tore through conveyor belts and assembler arms. Lewis's comm crackled. "Captain, we've reached the nexus," Kozlov reported. "Uploading the virus now." Just then, a massive blast door exploded inward. A wave of Alieni assault bots poured through. "Caldwell, launch the nukes," Lewis shouted into his comm. "We're out of time." As plasma bolts sizzled past his head, Lewis took cover behind a fallen robot. He checked his ammo, almost empty. "Hold the line," he yelled to his remaining men. "We just need to buy them a few more minutes." Lewis popped up, firing in controlled bursts. The air filled with the screech of tearing metal as both sides exchanged fire. He silently willed the virus to work faster, knowing Earth's fate hung in the balance. The upload bar on Kozlov's wrist computer hit 100%. "It's done, Captain," he shouted over the din of battle. Lewis nodded grimly, firing another burst into the oncoming horde of Aleni robots. The air crackled with plasma bolts and the acrid stench of ozone. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Cap, we made it." Staff Sergeant Mack stumbled into view, his armor scorched and dented. Corporal Kozlov was right behind him, clutching a bloodied arm. "Form up," Lewis ordered, gesturing to a fallen piece of machinery. "Defensive positions now." The four men scrambled behind the makeshift cover. Lewis's remaining squad members joined them, creating a ragged circle of determined defenders. Mack slammed a fresh mag into his rifle. "How many left, sir?" Lewis did a quick head count. 8 of us, thousands of them. They opened fire as one, a storm of hot lead tearing into the advancing robots. For a moment it seemed to work. The front ranks of machines stumbled and fell. But more kept coming. A plasma bolt seared past Lewis's ear, close enough to singe his hair. He saw Private Chen go down, a smoking hole in his chest. "Keep firing," Lewis roared. One by one, his men fell. Sanchez, O'Brien, Wong. Each death bought precious seconds, but the robots kept advancing. Then Mack took a direct hit to the chest. The big man's eyes went wide with shock. "Go!" he gasped, fumbling for his grenades. "I'll buy you time!" With a final burst of strength, Mack hurled himself into the robot ranks. His grenades detonated in a thunderous blast, momentarily clearing a path. "Kozlov, run!" Lewis shouted. The young Russian hesitated for a split second, then sprinted for the exit. Lewis watched him go, a mixture of relief and resignation washing over him. Now it was just Lewis, alone against an army of killer machines. He fired until his rifle clicked empty, then drew his sidearm. The circle of robots tightened around him. Just then, his comm crackled to life. Admiral Caldwell's voice, tight with tension. "Fire everything we've got left! For humanity!" Lewis's eyes widened as he saw the first contrails streaking across the lunar sky. Nuclear missiles, dozens of them, racing towards their position. A figure appeared at his side, Kozlov, panting heavily. "Couldn't leave you behind, sir," the Russian said simply. Lewis met his gaze, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "It's been an honor, soldier." Kozlov snapped off a crisp salute. Lewis returned it. The world went white. On Earth, the war suddenly, inexplicably stopped. Eliani's ships hung motionless in the sky. Their robot armies collapsed mid-stride, reduced to lifeless husks. In New York, a family huddled in a basement shelter felt the ground shake as the alien bombardment ceased. The father cautiously poked his head out, blinking in the sunlight. The streets were littered with smoking robot corpses. Aboard the Eliani flagship, alarms blared as systems failed cascade. The central AI core, once the pinnacle of alien technology, sputtered and died. Its last moments were filled with error messages it couldn't comprehend. Days turned to weeks. Search teams combed the lunar surface, sifting through the wreckage of the factory. They found twisted metal, shattered concrete, and a single intact helmet. Captain Johnny Lewis's name was still visible on the scratched faceplate. In Washington, D.C., a solemn crowd gathered before a new memorial. Names were etched in gleaming stone. Lewis, Mack, Kozlov, and all the others who had given everything to save humanity. An old woman laid a wreath at the base of the monument. Her grandson tugged at her sleeve. "Grandma, who were they?" She smiled sadly. "Heroes, child. The bravest souls who ever lived."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.